So before we bring up our guest speaker, I thought it might be worth painting the picture of what UH Ventures is all about and how we work with Dr. Jane E. Fritz and a Research and Education Institute. UH Ventures is a technology commercialization and investment arm for university hospitals. So we actively source and develop internal concepts for medical devices, software, and new service design models. We also work with outside companies that are early in the product development stage and market entry stage and have a solution that's good for the hospital system. We have an investment resources for investing capital into early stage companies seeking to build out their businesses and products. So one of the main ways we work with the Research and Education Institute is by working with many of you in the department to analyze and help realize the commercial potential of your ideas. We know that you're all sitting on a gold mine, not just when it comes to funding, but when it comes to your ideas and the innovations that can and should emerge from your research. So UH Ventures is at the ready to bring those ideas to the surface and to give them life. As you'll hear in a little bit, one of the key focuses lately between our groups is how we can give life to medical device concepts. Our institutes together conceived of a new program called MedTech Flyers, in which we will fund early iterations and further development of medical device prototypes. We're grateful for the support and the expertise of Dr. Jane and the team to help us assess the projects and strategize on how to best de-risk them for the market. So speaking of de-risking, this process often takes a village, and we're lucky. Cleveland has a wealth of partners that can help in this process, from regulatory advice and patent counsel to product development and value proposition strategy. So UH Ventures is lucky to work with so many of these great minds in our ecosystem. One of the key resources, and really I should say friends of UH Ventures, is Magnet, and in particular, Brandon Cornuke. He has a tremendous way of challenging our ideas in ways that can only make them stronger. It's an honor to have him here today and a privilege to introduce him. Brandon Cornuke is currently the Vice President of Startup Services at Magnet, where he specializes in strategy development, business model design, and lean innovation. Brandon began his career as an IT strategy consultant with Hitachi's global consulting team and earned his MBA from Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management shortly after. Afterwards, he worked for Target Corporation, leading one of the retailer's largest consumer electronics businesses, followed by a role at American Greetings, where he was Director of Digital Strategy and Innovation, and where he designed and built the company's digital innovation team. Brandon also has startup experience in bringing a new product to market, previously as co-founder of Joyce Labs, which developed a novel aerosolized-based athletic body powder. Lastly, Brandon is an adjunct professor of design and innovation at Case Western's Weatherhead School of Management. Brandon, we're eager to let you get started with your talk. Please take it away from here.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. First, let me say how delighted and honored I am to be speaking to you today. I want to thank Ryan, David Sylvan, Kip Lee, Brian Rothstein, and the entire UH Ventures team. I've been lucky enough to work with the Ventures group for several years now, and I can tell you that we're all incredibly fortunate to have such an amazing group of people and such a powerful asset in our community and as part of our innovation ecosystem. Working with them has truly been one of the highlights of my career, for sure. So, of course, when David and Kip invited me to speak to you today, I jumped at the chance. Oh, by the way, David said as he was walking away, the other keynote will be Dr. Peter Egger, and he's won a Nobel Prize. He's a Nobel laureate. Now, I will admit, I was suddenly filled with self-doubt. But then I had the pleasure of hearing Dr. Agre's wonderful address this morning and learning that we have a lot in common, a lot more than I thought, actually. We both lived in Minnesota for a time. Chemistry wasn't our strongest subject in high school, and we were both more interested in girls than in school. So I'm happy to say my dream of winning a Nobel Prize in chemistry is alive and well. So in the meantime, my other passion is helping innovators turn their ideas into businesses. And that's why I'm here to talk with you today. So this is what we're going to be covering. We're going to talk about 4 questions every innovation leader needs to ask to create a powerful value proposition and how to use that to accelerate innovation. So I'll quickly share how I realized that this is what I love to do with you in just a minute. So as Ryan said, I started my career at Hitachi, where I was helping folks implement IT systems and developing strategies to help do that. I went on to Northwestern, where while I was getting my MBA, I also founded a company called Joyce Labs that developed a product called Dry Goods. It's an aerosol body powder. That's a fancy way of saying the old powders that you used to dump on your skin. We put that into an aerosol form, and we were the first to do that and launched it to market. Later, I went on to Target Corporate, where I helped develop strategies to sell products like consumer electronics, televisions. From there, onto American Greetings, where I developed strategies to help develop innovations and new ways of thinking. When you're a company that makes greeting cards in today's digital world, you want to look for new business models, and that's what they asked me to do. And today, I work at Magnet here in Cleveland and in Greater Ohio, Greater Cleveland and Northeast Ohio, where we help manufacturers of all sizes thrive and grow and stay competitive. Specifically, I help innovators who are trying to turn their ideas into businesses. And while doing that, I am also lucky enough to be an adjunct professor of design and innovation at Weatherhead. Now, in all of these experiences, in every single one, I've found again and again that innovators struggle to describe the earliest stages of value creation, the key components that they believe they're trying to bring to life. I've seen innovators struggle with these things again and again. So today, I'm hoping to help you do 2 things. 1, simplify and sharpen your value proposition. And 2, quickly find the biggest risks lurking in your innovation projects. As Ryan mentioned, that's what the UH Ventures team does, and that's what these tools should help you do as well. So when I see product ideas, sometimes I see the South Park version of these ideas. For any of South Park fans out there, you might recognize this as an underwear gnome. The underwear gnomes have a pretty great business model. The first step is to collect underpants. The second step is, and the third step is profit. I actually do see underwear gnome ideas more than you might imagine. Right? And that's because, again, I mentioned, sometimes it's hard to describe the complexities of value creation. Sometimes I see one of these. This is the business plan. Many of you out there are familiar with these plans. They are tons of pages, and that's what makes them credible. They're usually in color, which also makes them credible. But they're full of guesses, just as many as our friends the underwear gnomes find, in fact. Because business plans are often built on what someone believes is true, not what they actually know is true. And unfortunately, with business plans, what happens is that you spend an awful lot of time and sometimes a lot of money developing these, all with the intent to convince the world that you have a great idea, just like these folks are doing, in fact, but with more pages behind it. More recently, there have been tools like this. This is a business model canvas. This is developed by a team under a gentleman named Alexander Osterwalder. This is a fabulous tool for innovators. This all falls under a category of thinking called lean innovation, which basically says, hey, move faster, put your ideas together quicker, experiment, learn. Don't be so tied up in developing really thick business plans. Get a business model canvas out there, and you'll be able to describe your value and move on. As you can see, there are several interconnected boxes on this, all with various components that describe value. I won't go through all of these in detail, but it's safe to say that all of these pieces are really important to bring a business model to life. Everything from the partners you need, to the customers you're working with, to the revenue sources and the cost structures, all of those are incredibly important. But I find that no matter which tool innovators that I work with use, whether it's an underwear gnomes written on the back of a napkin model or a business plan, or a business model canvas, their conversations about what to do next, about how to describe, often devolve into something that looks like this. And I'm sure many of you who have tried to build an innovation and create a new company have found yourself standing on a whiteboard that looks a lot like this, with a whole lot of ideas, a lot of complexity, but not a lot of answers about what's most important and what to do next. Well, I think that any of these tools, whether it's the back of the napkin or the business plan or the canvas, are all trying to simply do this. They're trying to describe how and why an idea might create value, and they're trying to identify the key guesses behind that idea. Now, we'll talk more about this in a little bit, but I want to pause and say key guesses underneath what you're describing as your value proposition are really what matter. They're what's going to separate what makes a great business model work and one that fails. Because every innovation is full of guesses. That's why it's innovation. And so to understand and use tools that better identify those guesses are going to get you farther down the path faster than big, complicated efforts or something that doesn't ask, what are my guesses in the first place? So let's start with value proposition. This is a term that you may have heard in many different contexts. So describing it for a minute makes sense. I like to think about it this way. It's the offer an organization makes to consumers that sets it apart from its competition. Now, I say organizations here and not companies because any organization, if it is trying to do something new, create something for someone else, deliver a service, solve a problem, it is trying to create value by offering a value proposition. And I say consumers here because consumers are those, at least as we'll talk about, as defined, as those who have a problem that they need to solve. They're going to be the ones that are actually engaging with the value proposition. Okay? And of course, setting it apart from its competition, that's the essence of a value proposition in itself. How is this different? What's novel? What's new? Now, if you look at the definition here, you can squint and start to see some fundamental components that make this central value proposition incredibly important to any business model. In fact, if you think about it, the value proposition sitting at the heart of the business model, maybe it's in a canvas or in the business plan, or even on that napkin, has this core value proposition, what I'll call hypothesis, in it. So let's build it together. There are 4, I believe, interconnected pieces that, when put together, describe a value proposition cleanly and help you understand what to do next. So let's build them. What's the first one? A problem. What problem are you solving? Asking this question is fundamental to creating value. Every time someone stops and says, hey, I want to do something new, I want to create something more, I want to use this tool, implicitly they're saying there's a problem to solve, something that the world is engaged with, that's struggling with, that's hard. Problems are fundamental to a value proposition. Second assumption, or the second component, is a customer. Again, I say customer. That's really shorthand for anyone who's engaging with this value proposition, who's going to find it compelling. They could be a patient, for example. It could be a constituent of some kind or a stakeholder. But let's say customer for now. The question you need to ask as an innovator is, who will my first customer be? Now, if you're sharp-eyed, you'll notice that I've snuck in a word there that might look a little off. Why did I put first customer? I put first customer because whenever you're creating value in a new way, it's really important to remember that there's going to be a core group of people who are really engaged with that problem, who feel it more intensely. In innovation parlance, this is called an early adopter. It also helps sharpen your focus for who your value proposition is meant to address. So make sure you're asking, who will my first customer be? Next, ask, what unique product or service am I or are you offering? Again, I snuck a word in here, unique. As we talked about before, value propositions are defined by their uniqueness, setting it apart. So do not forget to say not just what is my solution, what is my product or service or combination, but how does it stand apart from those that a customer may have at their fingertips to solve this problem. And finally, and this is one I don't see asked nearly often enough, what special assets does your team have to bring this to life? The way I put this when I engage with clients is often, why you? What pieces and parts of your special experience, what intellectual property, what capital, what assets, what network do you have that put you in a great position to deliver this? And if you have all four of these components connected to each other, you create a value proposition. And that value proposition will answer how does your solution solve a customer's problem in a unique way. Now, sometimes I have people say, that's common sense. Why is that interesting? I will tell you, it is common sense. I don't see people using it nearly enough. I can often have a conversation with an innovator who's been working on a problem or a product for years and ask them these four simple questions, and it will take us an hour to get through the answers because the customer might be everybody, and the solution is very complicated. Let's talk about it. Right? And there's lots of problems it's solving. Having a really clear understanding of all four of these components and how they fit together in simple ways will separate great value propositions from those that are going to struggle. Let's actually go through an example. So in 2011, an entrepreneur named Michael Dubin founded a company called Dollar Shave Club. And for those of you out there who have seen the commercial I'm about to show you, I guarantee you're about to laugh again. If you haven't seen this, well, buckle up. This is a lot of fun. We're going to watch this closely because apart from being hilarious, it's incredibly effective at developing a value proposition. So look and see if you can spot the components of value that I just described here.
Hi, I'm Mike, founder of DollarShaveClub.com. What is DollarShaveClub.com? Well, for $1 a month, we send high-quality razors right to your door. Yeah, $1. Are the blades any good? No. Our blades are f***ing great. Each razor has stainless steel blades, an aloe vera lubricating strip, and a pivot head. It's so gentle a toddler could use it. And do you like spending $20 a month on brand name razors? 19 go to Roger Federer. I'm good at tennis. And do you think your razor needs a vibrating handle, a flashlight, a back scratcher, and 10 blades? Your handsome-ass grandfather had 1 blade and polio. Looking good, pop up! Stop paying for shave tech you don't need. And stop forgetting to buy your blades every month. Alejandro and I are going to ship them right to you. We're not just selling razors, we're also making new jobs. Alejandro, what were you doing last month?
Not working.
What are you doing now?
Working.
I'm no Vanderbilt, but this train makes hay. So stop forgetting to buy your blades every month and start deciding where you're going to stack all those dollar bills I'm saving you. We are DollarShaveClub.com, and the party is on.
Okay, so for those of you in the virtual world, everyone here in the auditorium was desperately trying to stop from laughing, and I do appreciate your attempt, but I laugh at that every single time. Michael and team released that commercial on YouTube to tremendous success. It went wild. And I was curious as I saw millions of people hit this overnight and this company skyrocket to success. Why? Can we learn from a simple, fun, what kind of looks like a thrown together, I mean, I'll be honest, it's kind of thrown together, right? It looks like someone just maybe took a iPhone and followed him around and they did a few takes and put it online, right? How sophisticated can that possibly be? Where's this company really going? Let's see if we can find the elements of the value proposition matrix, these 4 boxes right in here. Let's start with the problem. What problem is Michael and team solving. All right? Talked about a lot of different things. But ultimately, what he said was, you know what? Razors are really expensive. Right? They're too expensive. And by the way, for those of us who have gone to, say, put yourself back in 2010, 2009, you head on into Target, where I worked at the time, and you go to pick up a razor blade. $14 for this thing. It just killed me every time I put that into the cart. I'm like, why is this happening? And the fun thing is, because I worked at Target at the time, and I'm sure this is live streaming to all my friends at Target, and they're going to be sort of wondering why I'm disclosing all of these, but I'm just going to go ahead and do it. I wandered over to the buyer, the merchant who is in charge of this category. This is true. And I asked them, why are your razors so expensive? And he said, didn't you know? They're one of the highest margin products in the store. And they're that way because there are companies out there, and I won't name them, that make sure these razors stay on the shelf and stay expensive and keep competition from eating away at the demand. That's a problem to solve. And that's the problem Michael was solving right there. Now, who's the customer? So he told us what the problem was almost immediately. Okay? Who's the customer that he was after? He leaves us some hints. When he takes a machete and chops that tape and throws it at the bear, when he takes the leaf blower and blows dollar bills around and plays a band named Kennedy. I actually had to look that up. It's great. It's a great song. Who's he after? He's riding on the tractor. I bet you're saying to yourself, I know. It's young men. And it was. He was going after young men who shave frequently. That's his target. Now, that's not an insignificant target for a startup, I will tell you. But it is sharp enough for him to be pretty specific about the kind of message he was putting together, the kind of music he chose, the format. He didn't have to at this point, because if you really look, the quality of the presentation was pretty darn good, in fact. He didn't have to spend his money rolling around his factory and throwing tape at bears and back boxes, right? He had some pretty high-end quality there. He could have done something different, but he didn't. He decided that young men would really dig that commercial, and they did. So what's the next question we ask ourselves? What other clues did he leave us? Solution. What's the solution he offered? He said, Alejandro's going to ship them right to you. And my blades aren't good. Are they good? No, they're great, right? That's what he said as he bursts through the totally needless orange piece of paper, right? His solution is he's going to take inexpensive razor blades, and he's going to deliver them to you every month. Now, before we all say, that doesn't seem so unique. I thought you said unique, Brandon. Didn't you say unique had to be in there? Let's transport ourselves back to 2011, shall we? How many of us were buying things online? Some of us, but not everybody. Okay, in 2011, this was not a common thing to buy something. And in fact, definitely not a common thing to buy it every month. This is now called the subscription business, right? We all know this. Oh yeah, we know this. But there's a reason that people say, oh, it's going to be the Dollar Shave Club of this. Because at the time, Michael was solving a problem around retail space and competitive dynamics that he couldn't solve any other way other than to say, I'm going to ship them to you. Now, it had to be $1 because razors were really, I mean, they were so expensive, but he had to break in somehow. He had to be 10x better. But he knew he could cover shipping. And in fact, if you signed up for Dollar Shave Club at the time, you did actually pay for shipping. And you got this little razor. And you got a blade or two, or a pack, in fact, every month. That was novel at the time and pretty impressive. So what's the final component of this puzzle? Team. What assets does he have that he shared with us that he's saying helps this business model, this value proposition come to life. You saw a few of them, okay? What was he walking around in? Well, he didn't choose that spot, again, as we said, just because he had to. He had no other venue. He chose it to show you something. He chose it to show you that he has a warehouse. And what was he jumping up and around and moving around with Alejandra? Boxes. Boxes of inventory. Things that actually will ship to you if you order these razors. He also said something interesting. He said, as he's riding along, he said, why does your razor need a back scratcher and a flashlight and 10 blades? Right? Grandpa had 1 blade and polio. Right? Hilarious. Love it. And he also said something else. He swung a tennis racket and he said, I don't need to pay Roger Federer. I'm good at tennis. What's all that communicate to you? That's about overhead. He has low overhead. Doesn't have to pay all these expensive marketers. He doesn't have to pay expensive athletes. He has marketing expertise. He has manufacturing, and that manufacturing leads to inventory. Right? All the assets you need to bring this value proposition to life. So in that simple, hilarious, beautiful commercial, Michael unpacked for us cleanly the 4 components of value. He did not have to explain to us his cost structure. He did not have to explain to us what partners he was using, FedEx, UPS. He did not have to explain to us his revenue streams. He didn't have to explain to us all the really, really heavy things that might go into a business plan. He just had to tell us a few things. Hey, young men who shave frequently, who think razors are way too expensive, because we all know they are, we're going to ship you some inexpensive razors to your door every month, and I'm going to do it because I have all the assets I need. Who wants to sign up? And millions of people did. And that's the value proposition that he put together right there. Dollar Shave Club saves you money by shipping great razor blades to your door without all the expensive overhead. Now, what happened to Dollar Shave Club? Does anybody know the story? They went on to be bought by Unilever for $1 billion for selling razor blades. Things that have been used forever in a novel way, in a value proposition that mattered. And that is all he needed to get millions of people to sign up and to get a major corporation to say, I'll buy it for $1 billion. So a value proposition is not just about the components of value. It is very handy when you're trying to describe it, but if you look closer, you will find some very important things embedded in this value proposition matrix. You'll find something that addresses this problem. Mr. Twain said, it ain't what you know or what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. What does that mean? When I have innovators come to me with these ideas, whether it's sure underwear gnomes, maybe it's a canvas, maybe even a value proposition matrix just like this, something clean, we get right there. They know for sure that it's going to work because they're innovators, they're entrepreneurs, they believe. And this is all they need to tell them so. But as Mark Twain said, allegedly, although I've looked this up, I'm not sure it's even Mark Twain, assumptions are what get you. When you know for sure that something is going to work, you will gloss over the things that will really get you into trouble because you don't stop and ask the question, does this customer really care? Is this really going to work? Sure it is. Funders, I need money. Partners, I need you. Retailers, let's go. Woof, off to outer space. This is how companies are built, right? Wrong. Companies are built, good ones, are built by understanding the assumptions you're making and how those assumptions can get in the way of your success. So the question becomes, is there a way, if the fundamental components of value creation are built within this value proposition matrix, is there a way to find the fundamental assumptions you are making right here? Are they sitting right in front of us? They are. Let's start with the assumption you're making between the customer and the problem. So look at that for a minute and ask, when you say there's a customer and there's a problem, what assumption are you making there? Well, you're making an assumption that that problem matters. And you're making an assumption that I would call is a burning problem. Right? Is this a burning problem? Is this something that a consumer will stop what they're doing, risk their hard-earned dollars, make some changes, take a risk, especially on something new, to say, I've got to have it? We've all experienced these burning problems, right? I like to tell a story that my wife hates because it's about her. Once we were in business school, and she was convinced that we had bed bugs. Convinced that we had bed bugs. And she went to all lengths. Now, she's out there going, we did. I've said it 1,000 times. We did. You saw the bites. I did. Well, I wasn't sure, but she was sure, and it doesn't matter because it was a burning problem to try and solve that for her. She replaced our sheets and replaced our mattress and the bed. And she actually literally put the bed on little wells with water so that the bugs couldn't crawl up and up the thing. She tucked in her pajamas into her socks at night. She made me circle the bites she thought were there, so in the morning, if there were more, we would know it. It was a burning problem. She's literally out there going, I cannot believe you. Burning problem, okay? Burning problem. Something that you are going to go to any amount of effort to solve. Those are the kinds of problems we're talking about. That's a consumer problem, but businesses have these problems all the time. You ask somebody what keeps them up at night, those are burning problems. Hospital systems, burning problems everywhere, right? Problems have to be burning problems for it to matter, to solve to a customer, right? We're also asking another question here, making an assumption between problem and solution. This one is not so hard to see now that you know the game we're playing, right? Does the solution solve the problem? And you might say to yourself, yeah, isn't that obvious? You would be shocked at how often a concept doesn't actually solve the problem you're trying to solve. Any number of innovations get tripped up on the way to success by believing that the thing that they're solving, the problem they're solving, it's actually solving it. It's actually working. Sometimes this happens when you just put a concept together and you say, of course this would happen. And then you find down the road that components of that solution are hard to find, don't exist, aren't compatible, don't work. If it's a service you're putting together, there's all sorts of pieces that you might not be able to assemble, find, vet. Solutions need to solve problems. And you are making a fundamental assumption when you put together a value proposition matrix that says that solution and that problem match together. And you're also saying that it solves it in a novel way. And let's not forget that. You're saying that solution, in its novel form, in its uniqueness, will actually solve that problem in a unique way. That is a problem all the time for innovators. Okay. Let's look at team and solution. Can you see it? What's the team and the solution have to do with each other? Can you deliver? Delivering that solution is not a foregone conclusion. This is an assumption that I see people making all of the time, especially in a world where it feels like any expert is on demand. The gig economy has made this even worse. Oh, yeah, you know what? I can find a talented coder who understands Python. Easy, just hire him. Google will help me find him. Yeah, I'll find him. Have you found him yet? No. But they're out there, right? The Google machine will help me get there. No, they won't. Not the way you need it to. Not the way a team needs to function, which is not as a separate bunch of entities that just create value when told, but a cohesive group that actually can overcome the really tough challenges associated with starting a company. Because that's what we're really doing here. We're starting value creation by starting an organization, and it's really tough to do that without a team that's cohesive. Another one that you see, another assumption I see made all the time, do you have any capital to support that? I can get that. I can raise it. Have you? No, not yet. Maybe you should try. Right? Capital is something that gets in the way all the time. And founders here, everywhere, that all they have to do is go and raise that capital by asking venture capitalists for money, right? That is not an assumption that's easy to vet for anyone who has actually tried to do that. What about intellectual property? Can you deliver it by keeping the intellectual property you have protected? Can you deliver it in such a way that no one else is going to come and do it better? These are all assumptions that when you pause and think through are crucial to being able to deliver that value. Let's talk about the connection between the team and the customer. This one is a little harder for folks to find, but when you think about it, it makes sense. What does the team do with the customer? What's that interaction? The interaction is what I call conversion or a sale. Right? Is the team set up to sell to the customer, and can it actually do so? Will anybody buy it? This one, when I ask innovators this, it drives them nuts. Because how do I know if anybody will buy it before I have it? We'll talk more about that in a minute. It's a very good question, but it remains true that that is an assumption you're making. And this is one that I find innovators are deeply confident in. They are deeply sure that people will buy it. And why is that often the case? I'll ask them, who have you talked to about this? And they'll say, my wife loves it. My best friend will buy it. Really? Have they? Well, no, but they said they will, and that's good enough. There's a big difference between will and would. And do be careful with those two words. If someone says, I would buy that, it is very different than I will buy that. And 99 times out of 100, you'll hear would, and they'll say would, and you'll hear will. That's the assumption you're making here. Now, collectively, these can be solved in a number of ways, addressed in a number of ways. And I'll go through that quickly, because there's a lot behind vetting these assumptions. One is to listen. So is it a burning problem? Go and listen. You could also call this observe. Observing, listening, understanding what the burning problem is. This is often referred to as customer discovery. People do this really well, sometimes not so well. Go and listen. Get out of your own four walls and understand what problems exist. In a hospital system like this, there is a fabulous opportunity to go and see this occurring everywhere. And in fact, most of the time, when I engage with medical professionals, this burning problem one is pretty well nailed because they really know, because they've experienced it. Oftentimes they're practitioners and others, and that's fabulous. Sometimes this isn't as obvious in certain contexts. Go and listen to your customer to understand if there's burning problems. Does it solve the problem? Well, you got to build something to see. This is where we use prototypes. If you've heard the term prototype, this is where I think about prototypes. This is actually to see whether the solution solves the problem. All right? Does it work? This is where I would build a prototype. Magnet does this all the time here in town for folks who have physical products. Can you deliver the solution? Organize. Go and get yourself an intellectual property attorney. Make sure you're patent protected. Make sure you have a board of advisors. Make sure you have investors. Make sure you recruit the right team members with the right assets and the knowledge, the experience, the expertise. Can you convert? Got to go out there and sell. This is where minimum viable products show up. If you've ever heard that term, that's an innovation term. It means the least viable thing that is at least viable that you can put in front of someone for them to actually exchange value with you in order to determine that you're on the right path. Now, value could be, do you like this? Enter your email here, and we'll email you more information. Well, that's a bit of indication that there's exchange, that there's a conversion happening, right? You could go so far as to say, hey, would you sign a letter that says you will buy these if these things happen? Okay, yeah, it's a letter of agreement of some kind. All sorts of ways to convert a customer without actually having the physical product perfected. And I will say that with a lot of emphasis, that you don't have to perfect your product in order to get these assumptions vetted, because that's what you're really doing here. Vetting these assumptions by listening, building, organizing, selling is what will help you move forward in your value creation journey. There's tons of ways to do that, by the way. To listen, you can observe, you do research, surveys, interviews. To actually see the solution works, there's benchmarking, prototyping, controlled testing, field testing, any number of things. You can, to deliver the solution, make sure you are scouting the competition. Make sure you have what I call a DTR, which is define the relationship. That's an operating agreement with your partners. Sketching a rough P&L, assessing the IP landscape, on and on. These are all ways that you can assess, vet the assumption, can you deliver? And finally, can you convert your customer? This is where selling an MVP comes in. And I just mentioned ad responses, email exchange, build and sell, try and buy, which means, hey, I've got a prototype. Will you take it and try it and use it? And if it works, I'll go back to you and ask, would you like to buy this? Will you buy it? And if not, I'll take it back from you. Now, if the person says, oh, no, you can't take it. We've got to have this. It could use some fixing. You're onto something, right? That's evidence of that assumption being true. And that's what you're really looking for here. You're looking for evidence in all these spaces where this is true. So let's go through an example. What does this look like? So I have a client and dear friend named Carla who had an experience with a loved one where she realized that it was very hard to dress them as they suffered from an illness due to their advanced age, a mental illness. Right? They had a hard time dressing and undressing themselves. And so as a sewer and as a serial entrepreneur, as a problem solver, she decided that she was going to design clothing that she called adaptive, that had wonderful soft close mechanisms that would open up and down the entire side. So instead of a tricky gown that you would need to put, maybe because shoulder injuries and other things made it hard, this would actually come apart anywhere you needed to put ports and things in, to help somebody move around. It was what she called an adaptive clothing line. And this was her first product. Let's see if we can build her value proposition for a minute. Okay? Her customer was elderly people who need help dressing and undressing themselves. The problem she was solving was it's hard to dress and undress an infirmed loved one, and the elderly clothing that she saw was ugly and uncomfortable. The solution was stylish clothing with soft closed seams and high-quality fabrics. And her team was built with sewing expertise, apparel design, and capital. She had everything she needed. So what did we do? We helped her go and assess whether it was a burning problem. It was. She talked to folks who helped people put their clothing on and people who had loved ones, so professionals in this space and loved ones who were helping other people. Everyone said this is a problem. She tried to figure out if it solves the problem by building prototypes. The picture that you saw was actually a prototype. Worked every time. Can you deliver the solution? Well, she had everything she needed, and she even went out and found folks here in town that have sewing capabilities. She had the capital she needed. She had the designs underway. She was ready. And then she went out to try and sell it. Can you convert the customer? We actually built a website. We helped drive traffic to it. We sent her out on all sorts of experiments to try and convert folks, and she couldn't do it. She couldn't do it. People didn't want to buy this, and she could not figure out why. What happened? What happened? What assumptions were we making? Well, actually, what happened was the customers were the caregivers of the elderly people, and when she went and talked to the caregivers and not the loved ones, what happened was the caregivers knew this was a problem, but the loved ones who were making the buying decisions had no idea, and the caregivers didn't have any way to tell them, and they got too busy and lost because most of this happens in home or in professional environments where that communication doesn't happen. And so all of a sudden, what she realized was it's not actually a burning problem for the people that need to make the purchasing decisions. So all of this infrastructure was in place to support this. Now, the good news is she didn't spend a ton of time and money doing this because she used lean innovation techniques just like this. And she realized something. And there's a happy ending, don't worry. She realized that what these folks really needed was a system that allowed caregivers to communicate with loved ones or the caregivers of the folks who needed them to make recommendations just like this. Not soft clothes and better products, although that's part of it, but all sorts of products that are required in the care of someone who needs a professional to support them along the way. And she is now developing what she is calling SwiftRec, which is a recommendation engine online to help solve the problem that she uncovered when she started to ask these great questions. I'm very proud of Carla, by the way. And if you know Carla, if you're out there, she is local here in town. She is also the founder of Buckeye Mask, which is making millions of masks, cloth masks for the state of Ohio, and was one of the heroes of the PPE effort here when UH put out the call for masks to be made and gowns to be sewn. She's the genius behind a lot of that effort. So thank you to Carla if she's watching. So with that, I will say thank you very much. I would love to answer any questions that might have come over through the Zoom link, or if we have any ready from Ryan.
All right, thank you very much, Brandon.
Yeah.
It's an excellent talk on innovation, and we definitely have a few questions to follow up with if we have time. So someone sent, in the example of the Dollar Shave Club, was there any IP protection? So did they go after patents or any other form like copyright?
I actually don't know. I wish I knew, Michael, and one day I hope to get him to respond to my LinkedIn requests. But I will ask him that question. But not to my knowledge. Actually, I do know that they had contracted with an established manufacturer of razor blades in Germany, and were able to set up what is essentially a network effect where they had a big group of consumers that were all there to support their effort, and they didn't really need to infringe on the IP of anyone. Razors are a technology that isn't highly patented at this point. It's well understood how to make them.
So the part of the innovation there is the business model.
The business model. That's exactly what it is. It's a classic example of the business model.
Okay, great. A couple more if we still have time. Someone's wondering about, besides regular market research, is there a way to learn about the demand for an innovation that doesn't exist yet? It's not really out there, but you're maybe floating an idea around.
Now, I mentioned it earlier, and I think to go into more depth is a good use of time because this is a tricky one. You really want to understand people's willingness to exchange value with you somehow. So even if it's put up a website, put in your email address to learn more. Or how about you take a pre-order that says when we're ready? Some of the platforms out there today actually allow this to happen. What you're looking for is any indication that someone will exchange value with you for your concept. Even if it's not directly dollars for the perfect version at the end of the road, you really want to make sure that as you move forward, people are indicating interest with something other than, yeah, good job, looks great, call me when it's ready.
Okay, great. All right, so one more, and this is kind of shifting focus a little bit. Mm-hmm. So they're wondering about, is every product really solving a problem? So they give a few examples about art or video games. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. So I say yes, every product is solving a problem. If you take art, for example, what problem is it solving? Well, at its most rudimentary form, it's solving the problem of beautifying our homes and our spaces, right? UH has an incredible art collection, and that's partly because they want to beautify the space. It's also a wonderful way to, in some cases, have an asset that actually retains its value and grows. So there's a number of problems it's solving. What do video games do? Are they worth it at all? They solve the most important problem out there, which is boredom. For many of us, I will tell you that. They solve a really important problem in boredom. So I maintain, and I have yet to have anybody send me a zinger that says it really gets under this question, and I can't offer a problem that a product is solving, but I'm looking forward to that one day.
Hey, yeah, well, great. Thank you so much, Brandon.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today and providing your experience and expertise on innovation. If anyone who's been listening and joining us for the afternoon has any questions for Brandon, please reach out to us and we can help connect you to him later on.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon.